Good.
Wednesday night DFS football diehards. Emil Cadlick here with the man, Jason Brady. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. Just woke up for a nap and ready to talk some football.
Got to have a nap before football after that crazy week, too.
Oh, yeah, 100%, always.
Of course, Jamie is, I'm sitting in for Jamie, as most people probably figured out. And they're volleyballing it right now. His women's team, is in the second round. They made the first round, and now they're playing the number one seeded team. And he said they're probably going to lose. So we'll probably see Jamie next week. But hopefully they'll win.
Yeah, hopefully they do. But, yep, so let's kind of go through the player pool here, and then Sunday we'll talk some more ownership. We'll talk some strategy there. But, yeah, on a Wednesday, as of now, yeah, it's weird. Like, for quarterback, there's not a ton of value sticking out, and maybe you can help me out. But up top, there's a couple options here. The first one being Josh Allen, and he's 8,100. They're 14-point favorites against Miami, averaging 28.2 DraftKings points. So with Allen, you have great stacking options. One of the best totals on the slate. And when we're talking about totals here, I think there's maybe one game that has a 50-point total, and I think it's like 50.5. So, yeah, this is a game I definitely do want to target. And also with Allen, you get some decent rushing yard upside, 36 rushing yards per game, which is not terrible. So, yeah, up top, I don't mind some Josh Allen. He is the most expensive quarterback on the slate.
Yeah, 17% owned off of bye week. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yep, I don't mind some Josh Allen. And then going down a little bit more, we have Matthew Stafford, who is 7,600. So Stafford, he threw the ball 41 times last week, which was weird. I kind of expected more running to happen. They were like 17-point favorites last week. They're still 14-point favorites this week against Houston. So they had a great matchup last week. It's a very good matchup this week again. And tons of stacking upside with Cooper Kupp, who we'll talk about as well. So I think Stafford, Kupp stacks are something I'm going to be looking at. This Rams offense has looked phenomenal this year. Stafford's looked phenomenal this year. He's getting priced up more and more each week. Like last week, he was 7,100. In week one, I want to see what he was. Week one, he was 6,200. So he's definitely came a long way, but he's having a great year, and I think it does continue this week with a very good matchup against Houston here.
Yeah, the problem is it's $7,600 now. He's only $500 short of Allen. And it becomes a little more difficult, although he's playing Houston, albeit at Houston. So that makes the decision tougher. Obviously, they're making it tougher on us, but he is right now 9.7% owned, the fourth highest quarterback rated or owned.
Nice, yeah. I think he's someone I'm going to be looking at for tournaments for sure. But for cash games, this is probably where I'm going to go. Jalen Hurts, I feel like I talk about him every week, and I feel like I play him in cash about every week, and I feel like it works out at least every week. We have Jalen Hurts. He's 7,200 going against Detroit. I love the matchup against Detroit at 48-point total, which is not bad at all, especially on a slate like this. So Hurts has had at least 21 DraftKings points in every game this year. And he has rushing yard upside, rushing touchdown upside as well. So yeah, I like Hurts quite a bit. He's somebody that maybe not. He might not be the best real life quarterback, but in terms of DraftKings scoring, like he's continually getting it done. He had 24 DraftKings points at week 7, 26 the week prior against Tampa Bay, 23 against Carolina, 31 against the Chiefs, and now he's going against Detroit here. I think Hurts is in a very good spot this week. I think he's a very safe option as well. 7,200 is not bad.
Yeah, Detroit is showing some life, but they seem to always end up, giving the yards, etc. Yeah, Hurts, he's down. He's 7,200. You're saving $900 from an Allen, and that rushing ability, like Allen, Hurts just seems to be able to find a way to score those fantasy points, and he's the third most owned quarterback at this point here on Wednesday. So he scares me. Sometimes these guys, you don't want to watch them, because you're thinking it's the end of the third quarter, and you're going, God, he's got 15 points. The next thing you know, he's got 23 fantasy points.
Yep, he's somebody that performs really well in garbage time, but you got to expect there won't be much garbage time here against Detroit.
Yeah, that's probably not gotcha.
All right, and then yeah, the last guy that does stick out, and it's like I said, it's weird because there's like not a ton of value, but Joe Burrow would be the other one. He is going against the Jets. Joe Burrow is somebody that's looking pretty solid this year. 38 passing attempts last week against Baltimore. Jamar Chase is having a crazy year. Yeah, 38.64 points for Burrow last week. I think I'm going back to him here again. Against the Jets, good matchup, great stacking options. You have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, who's very cheap as well. Don't mind me some Joe Burrow at all.
Yeah, that was the guy I was going to mention in case you didn't. Boy, they really surprised me last week. They really came out and won that game, and I really didn't think they'd win that game. They're looking good. I just wish Burrow could run like Hurts could, but gosh, he's doing well enough without that. That always worries me with this new thing where they're allowing quarterbacks to run these days. But I love that guy, and they're getting healthier. They're at the Jets. That's a good play. How much are we saving on him? Let's see, 7,100.
Yep.
$1,000 off of Allen.
Yeah.
That's a tempting play. I don't see anything else right now that's popping into my mind that I really want to attack. I know Jacksonville's at Seattle. Seattle's having troubles, but I don't know if I have enough guts to play Trevor Lawrence at Seattle, even after a bye week.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other guy that stuck out, he's cheap at Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he's cheap. He's 5,500. He's playing good, and he's not only playing good, like he's throwing the ball a crazy amount of times. 40 times he threw the ball against Atlanta. Threw the ball 47 times against Jacksonville. I guess my concern is Buffalo has given up the least amount of DraftKings points to opposing quarterbacks, but I mean he's cheap, decent stacking options. So Tua would be the other guy I was looking at down below, if anything.
Yeah, Tua. I worry about Buffalo because it's at Buffalo and they can play defense when they want to. So, but yeah, Tua's been playing well. He's got to hurry up and play well before Watkins gets traded there. Who knows what's going to happen there? And Lawrence, they've had the bye week, but they're playing at Seattle, and they're both at $5,500. But Tua, I like Tua. I think he's a good player. Now let's see, he's only 2.9% owned at this point. Tua is, and Trevor is 2.1% owned, so they're fairly low owned. But a dicey thing to consider at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like the match. I wish it was a different matchup, but if he's throwing the ball 40 times, I mean, he should be decent at 5,500. But yeah, like you said, there's nothing else really sticks out to you for quarterback.
No, that's it. That's it for now.
All right, so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty limited at quarterback. I mean, up top you got Josh Allen, Hurts, Stafford, Burrow, guys like that I'm looking at, but we'll see if anything does stick out later in the week on Sunday. So let's move on to the running backs now, and up top we have Derrick Henry, who is 8,900, a guy that I'm going to be going to this week. Didn't have much, if any, Henry last week, and it definitely did pay off for the most part. I think he had like 16 DraftKings points, so kind of busted in a way. He didn't have a terrible game, still rushed 29 times, but did not have that big game, and which was weird because I think they beat the Chiefs like 27-3. So it was weird seeing Henry not have a huge game there. But regardless, going against the Colts here, who the Colts actually have a pretty good run defense, but I really don't think it matters too much. They're still going to give Henry around 25 to 30 touches, if not more. They're passing the ball, had 2 targets, 2 receptions last week. This is the highest total on the slate, 50.5 points here against the Colts. So I think it's a great spot for Henry. Really curious to hear the ownership because I think he did hurt some people last week in terms of the production. Like I said, didn't have like the biggest game in the world, but if he's lower owned, I'll have more interest in him here.
Well, unfortunately, he's 18.9% owned. He's second highest owned running back behind, I'll say it for right now, Eckler. He's coming off a bye at New England. Eckler's number 1, so he's still well owned. I mean, you got to expect. He's been so well, even though he had a below average game last week. So,
yeah. Yep, and they priced him down. Last week, Derrick Henry was 9,200. The week before, he was 9,000. The week before, he was 9,000. So this is going to be the first week in a couple weeks where he's 8,900. So that's nice to see as well. But yeah, you mentioned Eckler. I think Eckler's in a great spot as well. Eckler is the man. He's somebody that can go out there. He's going to get a ton of targets, a ton of receptions, 7 targets in week 6. He had 5 in week 5, so they're getting him the ball and they're getting him the ball through the air as well. I think Eckler's somebody to definitely look at. And then also Alvin Kamara is interesting up top. You have Kamara going against Tampa Bay, who typically scares me in terms of the run defense, but Kamara has the ability to catch the ball. I think he's going to get a lot of reception. So, yeah, those guys right there, Kamara and Eckler, I think they're both good plays as well. They're cheaper than Henry, and they also have a ton of pass-catching upside, both of them.
Yeah, well, Eckler got some rest. The Chargers got some rest. He's $1,000 cheaper than Henry, so I can see why he's the number one owned, because that's a great spot for him. Kamara is incredible. That was just an incredible game. It's such a boring, tiring game, of which he ended up with, what did he end up with, 30 some odd? I mean, it was insane what he ended up, 10 catches. He found a way. He didn't rush the greatest. Do you think, is Tampa Bay going to find a way to minimize him, do you think? Or you just can't do it? It's going to be at New Orleans, so that kind of helps. But what do you think?
I don't think they can do. I don't think they can do it. If they do, choose to throw Kamara the ball 11 times like it did in Week 7, I don't know how well they're going to stop that. Yeah, he had 10 receptions, 128 receiving yards. Like, that's unheard of.
Well, they may have to attack the quarterback. If they put pressure on Winston, maybe that causes the issue.
Mm-hmm.
But, wow, the potential's there. He's getting, I don't know what he's getting, 50%, or the number of touches on the team is insane, and I think it's fantastic for Kamara owners and good for DFS.
Yep, for sure. But going down a little bit, like we talked about, Derrick Henry up top, Kamara up top, Eckler up top. Going down a little bit more. So this is an interesting one. We have DeAndre Swift, who this is a guy that he is basically like a running back and a wide receiver combined into one. This is the guy that is leading, I believe he's leading like targets and receptions on the Lions, which is crazy as a running back, but he's doing it. You have a 48-point total against Philly. They are 3.5-point dogs, which I do like, which means they're going to be passing. Does help out a guy like Swift here. So they did price him up 1,100, but I do still think he's in play. He has 42 receptions on the year for a running back, which is pretty crazy. So, yeah, I think Swift is good. He had a big game last week. I did like him last week quite a bit. Going right back to him, regardless of the price change. 28.4 DraftKings points last week, and he was 6K, and now he's 7,100. But, yeah, I think he's still in play here.
Yeah, he's the third most owned running back at 16%, so people aren't as scared off of him. Philadelphia, still kind of struggling. This is a great spot for Detroit to get that first win. They're at home against Philadelphia. And Swift just keeps getting better and better. It's really incredible what he was doing, because he's not necessarily starting still. They still put Jamal in there, and I think it's kind of a neat way to give that experienced player kind of start the game and whatnot. But Swift's incredible. 7,100 is still a very good price. He's still way below Henry and Eckler, and he's performing fairly well.
Yep, it's just it's hard to ignore his crazy pass catching upside. But this next guy is it was frustrating watching this game last week, because I kind of thought the game would go a little bit differently. The Rams ended up throwing the ball around 41, 42 times last week, and they only gave Darrell Henderson 15 rushing attempts. So I think I'm going to go back to him again this week. I think last week he was like the number one owned running back, so curious to see how much that has changed. Hopefully it did change, because he's in another great spot here. He's going against Houston. They're 14-point favorites. Is a great game script as well. Had a great game script last week against the Lions. It did not work out so well, but one touchdown could have changed his whole outcome. I mean, 9.4 DraftKings points. If he would have scored, it would have been around 15. Would have been happy with that. Was not happy with 9.4, but don't mind going back to Henderson. It is a phenomenal matchup against Houston. Houston's run defense is not great at all. It's a 47.5-point total. They're favored. They should be running, but it kind of seems like the Rams just want to pass. But I do think there's a good chance that Henderson does find the end zone this week. So it's the 6,500, hoping he's a little bit lower owned than last week.
Well, Detroit came out, smacked them in the face, got a 10-point lead. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that just gave them the excuse to start passing the ball. But you're right. If they can get ahead a little bit in that game at Houston, Henderson can go back and do it. He's the fourth most highest owned running back at 15.5%. So people are still confident in him. Perhaps it's $6,500 is not a bad number for him as far as his salary is.
Yep, they actually priced him down from last week. It was 6,600 last week. Now he's 6,500,
So you save
and
$100.
it's still a really good matchup against Houston. But yeah, like you said, Detroit got out early. That did not help. Hopefully, it does not happen this week.
Probably not.
Yep, wouldn't think so. And then the other guy that does stick out to me, curious to hear his ownership as well, is going to be one Joe Mixon going against the Jets. The Jets have actually given up the most DraftKings points to opposing running backs. So I do like the game script. He's 6,900, averaging about 15.6 DraftKings points per week. I guess the only concern is it is a very low total, 42.5 point total there. But yeah, it's a great game script. The Bengals are 10.5 point favorites. I think they're going to run the ball. And should be a good spot for Mixon here, who did look decent last week. He had 59 rushing yards, had a touchdown as well to go along with it. Would have liked him to get a little bit more carries, but if that was against Baltimore, I think it's an even better spot here against the Jets. I think they're going to run all over him.
Yeah, I don't think they threw to him last week. I don't see him in the stats, which concerns me a little bit. Yeah, I'll have to double check that, but I didn't see any catches. I almost don't believe the stat. It should be right. But yeah, good specific. He's a little lower down. He's at 8.1% owned. He's about the 9th owned running back, so he's slid down just below Kamara. So that'll help a little bit. And they're on a roll. They want, I forget where they're in the conference. They're probably leading their conference right now or close to it. So since he's at a position to really, make a big move here, and I think he's relatively healthy from being injured earlier. So Mixon's an interesting play.
Yeah, like you mentioned, 0 targets in Week 7, but he did have like 6 targets, 5 receptions the week before, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm not going to worry about that.
Yep, so Mixon is another guy that did stick out, and then that's about it. I mean, there's a couple other guys that do stick out that are pretty cheap. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of these guys. So this is an interesting one. Let's talk about Michael Carter. So he's 4,900. He's very, very cheap. You don't need much. Going against Cincinnati, and he had 9 targets last week. So he has some solid reception upside at a very cheap price tag, and should be good for about 10 carries as well. So Michael Carter, in terms of like a very cheap play. So I'm assuming nobody's going to play him. He's kind of somebody that sticks out to me in terms of some salary savings.
2.1% owned. So that is a very intriguing play right there.
Yep. I mean, he'll get some opportunities here. I mean, the Jets may not be good at all, but Carter's.
You got to worry about the situation at quarterback because they're going to have White in there, and then they're going to have Flacco, who's familiar with the style of offense. So you could get Flacco to come in and play a percentage of this game and actually, give the benefit. So because of the quarterback position, I bet that ownership's going to stay low. And that's a tempting thing. Everything has risk. That's obviously with GPP is nothing's obvious or the ownership would be higher. So that's an interesting one.
Yep, that's very interesting, especially considering the ownership. And then the other guy that does stick out. So if Miles Sanders does not play,
you got my guy.
I'll let you talk about it.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Kenneth Gainwell, 5,000. So he's very cheap. So if Miles Sanders is not out, I do like Gainwell quite a bit. Yeah, 8 targets last week, had 5 carries as well to go along with it. I think Gainwell is going to be very interesting. But that is if Miles Sanders is going to be out.
Yeah, if Sanders is out, I hope that's an early game. It probably is off the top of my head. Gainwell had 8 targets, caught 4 balls, had the touchdown. It's that ability to catch the ball, very similar to Carter. If Sanders is out, I would probably go with Gainwell over Carter. They have almost the same. And as a matter of fact, Gainwell right now is about 10, 11th down on the list, just below Nixon at 7.6% owned. So people are already hedging their bets about Sanders. And that's a very tempting play. I love these running backs who run and catch the ball.
Yep, and that's exactly what Gainwell does do, and he's going against Detroit. So, yeah, we'll have to monitor that throughout the week. We'll talk about it more on Sunday to see if Sanders is out. If he's out, I think Gainwell's in a solid spot there. But anything else sticking out to you in terms of running back here?
Well, that was the one I was looking at. as Gainwell as being a nice quote unquote sleeper. I haven't really seen anything else other than what you've already mentioned. You nailed me on that one.
Well, it looks like we're on the same page there, and I think that. Oh, I don't even. Did I bring up Nick Chubb?
No, you did not bring up Nick Chubb.
Well, let's talk about him then, because Kareem
Yes.
Hunt's going to be out, and Chubb is going to have the backfield to himself, and he's 6,800. So, yeah, I can't believe I almost missed him. But yeah, Nick Chubb is going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. Not the best matchup in the world against Pittsburgh, but we know Cleveland are going to try to run the ball and run it a lot. We saw what Johnson was able to do last week. But yeah, Chubb's back. Looks like he's should be good to go. They're talking about bringing him back this week. So yeah, I think Chubb's in a great spot here at 6,800.
That's an excellent point. $6,800. He's at 4.1% owned, so he's not very well owned at this point in time. I wouldn't be surprised that going up. That's a good point. Pittsburgh's a little scary, but I'm not. And of course Cleveland. We're not really sure at the quarterback position. Baker's it's starting to hint that he may play, but last week I just it's going to be a great game. Because Cleveland really wants to. That's a great game. I think that's a great play with Chubb. That's just a game where everything is it's going to be an intense, hard-fought game, and they're not going to give up. Nobody's going to give up in that game.
Oh, yeah. Cannot wait for that. So, yeah, Chubb, glad I was able to remember him last second. But let's move on to the wide receiver position. And, yeah, so it's a weird slate. We don't have any Devontae Adams. But we do have Cooper Kupp, who's made his way to the top of the wide receiver list here at 9,000, and I like him. Cooper Kupp is a guy that he may even still be a little bit too cheap at 9,000. Like, this guy is crazy. I mean, he's got at least 10 targets in each and every single game this year. He's had at least, I think he's had like 4 or 5 games with multiple touchdowns. Had 40.6 DraftKings points last week, 13 targets, 10 receptions. He's just on another level. They're getting him the ball. They're getting him the ball a lot. And we saw last week it didn't matter if they were 17-point favorites. They're still going to throw the ball here and there. So, yeah, Cooper Kupp, I think he's a phenomenal spot here, 9,000, probably very high owned as well, even though the prices went up 600.
9,000. He's the third most owned wide receiver, 15.3%. Yeah, obviously you've got to expect that. At Houston, I expect the consistency to continue with that. Now, maybe they run it all game with Henderson.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's what I thought last week. But yeah, Kupp is this guy's good. He is very good. I thought he wouldn't be able to keep up this pace, but he just keeps on doing it. And we're on like week 8 by now, so maybe he's going to do this all year, which is just insane.
It is insane, but he's got a better quarterback.
Yep.
That was kind of the thing that I worried about. Just that things are going to change. They got a lot of players. They're going to run the ball, but I think with the addition of Mitchell, I think it just really helped Kupp.
Yep, for sure. But going down a little bit, so there is a range of wide receivers in this mid 6,000 range. This is probably where I'm going to be for the most part. Deontay Johnson being the one I probably have the most interest in. And Deontay Johnson, he's very good. I think he is a little bit underpriced here going against Cleveland. Cleveland does rank 26 in terms of DraftKings points given up to opposing wide receivers. And when you take a look at Johnson, when Johnson does play, he does very good. 18 DraftKings points against Seattle, had 15 against Denver, 24 against Green Bay. The worst game he's had all year was Week 1 against Buffalo, where he scored 14.6, but he's averaging about 10 targets per game. Of course, we have no Juju Smith-Schuster, so that definitely does help. He's averaging 19 points per game as well. So, yeah, I like Deontay Johnson quite a bit. I think it's a great spot for him. 6,700, I do like it a lot.
Yeah, and again, another team coming back from a bye week. He's owned at 7.1%, so he's down there in the teens or whatnot. And Cleveland's hurting. Now, Cleveland really impressed me how hard they played and win that game. It was kind of a close game at the end against Denver. But they came out on offense and defense with a purpose despite having the injuries. And, of course, the quarterback situation's still worse. But I really think you're right about Deontay Johnson. Coming back from a bye week with the situation there, that's a good play.
Oh, yeah, I do like Johnson quite a bit. And then I'll kind of throw these two together. You got to assume that they're going to be pretty high owned, especially if he is rolled out. So Antonio Brown is listed as doubtful. I guess he had like a crutch at practice today, so there's a good chance he does not play. If he does not play, and this was something I did really well last week, I pretty much played Chris Godwin in every single lineup. Chris Godwin, he was 5,900 last week, which was crazy. He scored 28.1 DraftKings points. He's now 6,400, which is still too cheap. And if Brown is indeed out, that is just it's another steal. It is definitely another steal. Tom Brady, 44 years old, he's still getting it done. And then Chris Godwin, so he is 6,400. Then also Mike Evans, he'll definitely be in play, 7,000. He had a 3-touchdown game, 31.6 DraftKings points. So if Brown is indeed out, which it's trending that way, I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, we got to go back to him.
Yeah, it doesn't look like AB is going to play. Yeah, that really worked out well with Chris Brown last week. So he has moved up, but it's still a great situation at New Orleans. And he's 9% owned, so he's about the 10th, 11th or so most owned wide receiver. It's not horrible, 9%.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I do think that does go up once we do get like 100% confirmation Brown's out.
Yeah, it's got to go up. It's definitely got to go up. How did that Tyler Johnson do? Did he flop?
Johnson, I don't know.
I should look that up because we were kind of toying with him.
He had two targets, 2 receptions, 3.6 draft
Whoopee! Points. Okay, so that didn't work.
Yeah.
Which means it probably will this week. Just kidding.
That's how it goes. But yeah, I think both Godwin and Evans are in phenomenal spots for sure. But moving on to another guy that I do like is going to be DJ against Atlanta here. I love the matchup. Moore is 6,200, which that is very cheap. And again, it's a great matchup against Atlanta. Moore's been very quiet the past couple weeks, but he has had 30 targets combined in the last 3 weeks, and I really don't mind some shots on Moore. You gotta think, like I'm predicting that he's going to be somewhat low owned, and when I said 6,200, I meant 7,200. He's 7,200 against Atlanta here. So yeah, I think DJ Moore's in a pretty solid spot. Hasn't had that breakout game since Dallas in Week 4 where he scored 34.9, but I don't know what it is with Sam Darnold. Darnold's not been looking great, but hopefully he can bounce back. I think it's a great spot for Moore against this Atlanta defense.
Yeah, 6.9% owned is DJ Moore. It'd be nice to, at Atlanta. Atlanta's not the greatest team in the world, so maybe they can get that game going. Darnold is not responding well to pressure putting upon him. He's starting to make mistakes, but hopefully they can clear that up in this game. And if they do, of course, DJ Moore could benefit from that. So that's a good play.
Yep, and then on the other team that they're playing, Calvin Ridley, he's a guy that I was really high on last week because of the price tag, 6,600 last week. He's 6,600 again, and it's not like he did bad. He scored a touchdown. He still had 10 targets. He just has not had that big breakout game this year, and it's concerning a little bit because we're going into Week 8, but there were 2 weeks he did not play. But yeah, it's not like he hasn't had a bad game yet. He just hasn't had that one big game. The worst game he's had was Week 1 against Philly, 8 targets, 5 receptions, only 10 points. So, I'm going to, especially if he's this cheap, I'm going to keep playing Calvin Ridley. I think the breakout game should come. It's just crazy that it has not happened yet.
What's interesting about Calvin Ridley, and I'm not, didn't watch the whole game, but he had the most targets of the team. He had 10 targets, but he only caught 4, so I'm not sure if some of those were uncatchable or not. He snuck the touchdown in to save it because he also ended up with, 12 fantasy points. I'm starting to doubt him. I love the guy, but, he had the personal time off. I guess he was stressed or whatever. I don't know the exact story. I'm worried about it. He's not getting in the end zone. He's really not a red zone kind of a guy, especially with the tight end there, Pitts. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if I want to play this guy. I hate to say that because I like to be positive, but
yeah,
I'm not very confident right now in Ridley.
It's hard to be. It's really hard to be. I mean, like I said, he's not playing terrible. It's just he has not had that big game like we all expected him to do this season. I mean,
he's the 8th most owned receiver at what was it here? My dyslexia, 10.4%. So that's pretty good. So that means people haven't given up on him like me.
Yeah, I think I'll try him out for a couple more weeks. We'll see what happens, but hopefully he gets it together. All right, so we talked about Ridley. Let's see who else that does stick out. So I guess the other guy that does stick out is going to be Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is 6,500 going against the Patriots, who are 25th in terms of DraftKings points given up to wide receivers. This, I'd say, is more of a cash game play for me, kind of a safe play here, a very cheap price. With Keenan Allen, you can always expect a ton of targets, a ton of receptions. That apparently Mike Williams is like the boom guy in the offense in terms of catching the ball, scoring a lot of touchdowns. Keenan Allen only one touchdown this year, which is definitely disappointing. But he's safe. I believe he's had at least 10 DraftKings points every single week. So you can count on him for that. You can count on him for some receptions, which is good on DraftKings for sure. So yeah, don't mind Keenan Allen, but I don't think he has like a huge ceiling. So don't know how much I'll go there in tournaments.
Well, he's $1,200 less than Mike Williams in salary. But like you said, he usually doesn't score a ton of touchdowns, but he scores enough, and with the receptions and the yardage. But he's got to start getting in the end zone here and there, or maybe getting a few more, because even though he's fairly low value, salary at 6,500, he's starting to become more difficult to play. But we'll see what happens here with a week off versus New England.
Yeah, I don't mind him there. And then, so we'll talk about some value now. And for wide receiver, there's like not a ton of value that does stick out, but I guess the cheap guys that do stick out, Brandon Cooks, he's 5,700 for Houston going against the Rams. He's pretty much the only viable play on this Houston offense. The Rams, they're going to be 14-point favorites, so I do expect Houston to be trailing, throwing the ball quite a bit. And Cooks is getting a ton of targets, only 7.1 DraftKings points last week, so Cooks was somebody that I was looking at. And then also Jalen Waddle, who's 100 cheaper. Jalen Waddle, tough matchup against Buffalo, but he's getting a ton of targets and he's very cheap. So those two guys in that mid-range, and then also T. Higgins is a cheap guy that I don't mind, 5,200 going against the Jets. He actually had 15 targets last week, so 5,200 for Higgins. So those are like the cheap guys I'm looking at this week.
Well, you would be surprised that Brandon Cooks is the number one owned wide receiver at this point. 17.5% owned. So I guess they see the same thing, $5,700, and he's the man. I just worry a little bit about playing the Rams. But maybe the Rams will have a little bit of a semi-off week since they won that big game. Got from being behind by 10 points. And Waddle, let me go find Waddle here. Waddle is only 2.8% owned against Buffalo. So people are scared at going on the road against Buffalo. I see that in these numbers. $5,600. That's a pretty cheap price.
I'm curious about what's T. Higgins and Jamar Chase?
All right, T. Higgins is 6.5% owned, a little higher up. And Chase, God, that guy's incredible. Fourth most owned wide receiver, 11.7%. Even though, he's at 7,500. I mean, Kupp's at 9,000. Diggs is at 8,100. But things are starting to roll in Cincinnati, and this guy is incredible.
Isn't it crazy that Jamar Chase started off at 4,800 in week 1?
Did he really? Oh, my gosh. 7,500, 11.7% owned.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Now, a guy who we kind of forget about is Cortland Sutton. They're playing at home against Washington. He's $6,400, and he seems to be putting some pretty good games together. So he's a guy that he's 5.9% owned, so he's like 15th or so on the list. He's somewhat down there, but he's a tempting play. It's 6,400, not too bad.
Yeah, for sure. Jerry Jeudy, though, is Jerry Jeudy supposed to come back this week? Or is that?
Yeah, he's supposed to come back, but we don't really know exactly. Yeah. But that's a good point. Maybe that's Jerry Jeudy right now is 3% owned, and he's at 4,900. But
he's cheap.
Yeah, you got to worry about that. But maybe it helps. Maybe it actually makes him guard Jerry, assuming he plays. I think it's still not 100% that he plays. We'll obviously know by Sunday.
Yeah, but regardless, like against Washington, great matchup, really good matchup there.
Did you see Russell Gage?
Yes,
A
Russell
guy I
Gage had a good
completely
game.
gave up on. I don't remember the total, but it was. Let me go look real quick, just to annoy myself even more. He scored 4 catches, 67 yards, a touchdown. So he got 16 yards, 16 fantasy points roughly, and weren't expecting anything out of that guy. Yeah, I wish I'd have thought about playing him, but how could you? He was
He's done nothing.
Yeah, he's done nothing.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
And I'd hate he's 4,200 this week at 3%, but against Carolina. But I don't know where to go there. I don't know why all of a sudden they went to him, and I don't know why I should think they're going to go to him in week 8. So that's a bit of a problem for me.
Yeah, for sure. He's tough to gauge.
Yes. No pun intended.
So
So
yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, is there anybody?
What happened to Viliska Chenault? The guy was insane, and then he's nothing.
I don't know. Yeah.
You got any feel for that? Now, they had a bye week, so we don't really know. There's no trend here, but he's only $4,700. But I'm not sure if I want to play him.
He had 10 targets in week 6. I forget which week I played. I think I played him in week 5 against Tennessee, and for some reason I think they benched him for like the majority of the game. I forget why, but he only had 3 targets, 1 reception.
Yeah, that didn't help.
And then the week after, just 10 targets. So I mean, he's decent.
Yeah. I mean, he could be a sneaky play at $4,700 at Seattle.
Yeah.
Which worries me a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
why. Was there anybody else that sticks out down low? I'm really having trouble finding any cheap plays this week.
No, I haven't really found anything. I'd like to go back to Mooney, but I just don't feel comfortable with that. San Francisco should be pretty upset right now and want to beat Chicago, so I'm a little worried about that. So nope, I don't have anything there.
Yeah, hopefully something sticks out.
Odell Beckham.
The week.
Odell Beckham. Just kidding. That was a joke. I'm just
Odell's so cheap, it doesn't make sense, but he's so bad.
Such a
he's
sad
so
situation to see that guy. And he keeps getting hurt, and I don't know. Oh, my God. I'm just giving up on him.
Yeah, it's great. And 4,600, but he can't catch a ball. He can't catch.
No.
It's weird.
I don't know what's going on.
No, but
that's
hopefully
pretty much I've got for me.
Yeah, same. But in terms of the tight end position, though, we'll move on to. It's different because we have no Travis Kelce, of course. So we have the most expensive tight end in Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts is doing now what I kind of expected him to do in the early going. Back in week 1 where he was 4,400, now he's 6,300. So I think Kyle Pitts is fine going against Carolina. They're obviously throwing him the ball a lot. He has 8 targets last week, 10 the week before, 9 the week before that. And he's been looking really good. So, I think Kyle Pitts is decent at 6,300, most expensive tight end on the slate.
Yeah, he does look good. He's the 5th most owned tight end at 5.7%, which is relatively high because the number 1 tight end is 7.7, which is Noah Fant. So these numbers aren't really high at tight end. So relatively high owned. But, yeah, he's catching on, and he's used at the goal line too.
Yep, don't mind him. And then, but I typically like to save some salary at tight end. Dallas Goedert, he's going against Detroit here. He has 4,700, 48-point total. Don't mind stacking him up with Hurts. No Ertz, no Zach Ertz. He's obviously got traded to the Cardinals, so it does help a ton. He only had 5 targets last week, but had 70 yards. And again, it's a great matchup against this Detroit defense. Yeah, I don't mind Dallas Goedert at all this week at his price tag of 4,700.
Yeah, 6.1% owned, 3rd most owned tight end. Yeah, I think that's a great play at Detroit. This could be an interesting, fun game. I'm hoping that's a really high-scoring game. What was the total for that? Do you recall?
I believe it was like 48, which is pretty decent.
Not a bad total
slate
at all.
Mm-hmm.
I got a funny feeling that's going to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, good for sure. But other than that, Hunter Henry's interesting. So going against the Chargers have given up the 3rd most DraftKings points to opposing tight ends. Hunter Henry has that revenge narrative going for him there. Hunter Henry has actually scored a touchdown in his last 4 games, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, don't mind some Hunter Henry there, 4,200.
Yeah, let me find him here. I was looking at something else. I hope I don't forget. Yeah, he's the man. He's fairly down, 2.6% owned, so he's fairly low owned for a tight end.
Yep. Yep. I mean, he's been scoring though. He's been getting it done.
Definitely has. They're looking for him at the end zone.
Yep, and then I guess the last guy that sticks out to me is going to be Ricky Seals-Jones, a guy that I've been all over the past couple of weeks, and he's doing pretty good. I mean, he's 3,800. Last week had 7 targets, 6 receptions. The week prior had 15.8 DraftKings points against Kansas City. Going against Denver here, so it is a very tough matchup, but, I mean, they're throwing him the ball a lot. 7 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets since Logan Thomas went on the IR. So I think Seals-Jones is somebody I'm going to keep going back to if I need to save the salary.
Has he gone up in salary at all, or over the last?
I think
2
he
weeks?
went up like 100 from last week.
Not much, $3,800. That's a pretty nice salary.
Yeah.
That's tempting. That is still, even at Denver, that's a very tempting thing to do. Again.
Yeah, he's cheap. Anybody else stick out to you?
Well, a couple of guys I was thinking, I just, this is more of a question, but the C.J. Uzuma for Cincinnati, he's $3,700, which he's only $100 lower than Ricky, so maybe Ricky's a better play, but they're at the Jets. Can you start this guy? He's 2.3% owned. You got all those receivers, but he seems to be getting some targets.
Yeah, had a big game, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I will say between him and Jones, he doesn't have the most target upside, but he's going to have the much better matchup. I mean, the Jets, much better matchup than Denver, so yeah, don't mind that at all.
It's something to think about. It's kind of a weird thing because the guy was never really that good. I mean, he was an okay guy. I mean, he's a great, but all of a sudden, I think he's progressed in his play, and of course, the situation is great because he's got a great quarterback. The down thing is there's so many targets in for the Bengals, but he's becoming an important player for them, and the quarterback's looking at him. So, something to consider. That's the other one I had.
I like it. Yeah, I think that's about it for tight end. That was the only other one you had?
Yeah, I don't know when Gronk's coming back. I didn't look at that one. Obviously, the first time he comes back, it would probably be a good play. Right now, he's a $4,600 salary, but I don't think he's coming back this week. That's a pretty high salary. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
All right, sounds good. And then we'll quickly touch on defense. We'll talk more about it Sunday. But for me, I typically choose to punt down at defense, and I guess the one sticking out to me is going to be Washington. I know their defense does not look good, but they're just way too cheap, 2,100. I remember the last time Washington was very cheap. They were at 2,000 against Kansas City. They scored 8 DraftKings points, which is 4x. That's great. They were 2,200 against Green Bay. They scored 7 DraftKings points. That's great. So, yeah, if they can give me a good 7, 8 DraftKings points at 2,100, I'll be very happy with that.
And they are the 5th most owned defense, so other people are thinking that too, 6.7%. And the top defense right now is Seattle against Jacksonville at 8.2%. So, they're fairly high up there. But maybe they can start playing.
Yeah, maybe.
But, I mean, they're getting better. They're scoring some points.
Mm-hmm.
We've obviously expected a lot more from them. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the other punts I was looking at would be the Lions defense. Wouldn't be shocked if Hurts threw a pick or two, turned the ball over. And then also the Jaguars defense. Those are the 3 cheap ones I'm looking at, Jaguars, Lions, and Washington being my favorite.
Yeah, the Lions are 1.7% owned. They're almost at the bottom of the ownership. So that would be great for GPP. And what was the other one that you mentioned?
The Jaguars.
Yeah, they're high up. They're actually the 6th most owned at 6.5%. So people are thinking like you. Geno Smith, he's a guy who can make mistakes, and I don't see it changing. Even though he's getting reps in practice for like 2 or 3 weeks now, he just doesn't.
Hmm.
I just don't. He just doesn't have it. He just doesn't have it. And so, yeah, that's an interesting play too. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense. They're higher
Yep.
up,
And
but
then
that's still a good play.
who'd you say the number one owned defense is?
Seattle Seahawks against
Oh yeah.
Jacksonville, $2,800, 8.2%
Yeah, I definitely
owned.
get that. Yep, they're decent, and then also, I guess the 49ers 3,500. I just don't like paying up for a defense that much, but the 49ers 3,500 against Chicago is not terrible.
Yeah, let's see here. They're 6.4%. They're actually about the seventh most owned, 3,500. Interesting. You know, boy, Tampa
Yeah,
Bay is at $4,200 at New Orleans, but they're only 1.5% owned. But that's a lot of money to pay for a defense.
yeah, and then the Rams are 5,100. How owned are they?
Los Angeles Rams, 2.8%. Not really highly owned.
Yeah, they're
That's
expensive.
surprising.
Yeah,
Well, they're $5,100, so that may be why.
it's crazy. But yeah, mostly probably Washington for me is going to be my go-to. So hopefully they don't look too bad.
Yeah, that's a nice play. I like that.
Yep. So yeah, that's about it for me. I think we covered a lot.
We have done it. A nice early look here on Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure.
All righty. Anything else you want to say before we head off?
Nope. I mean, just look out for some injury news, and then we'll touch back on Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. We'll talk game by game by then, talk some injury, talk some strategy, talk some stacks. But I think it's always a great idea on Wednesday to go through the player pool and see what does stick out midweek.
We got some possibilities, that's for sure. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys Sunday morning.